Hello, fans of international football. World Cup 2022 is over. Argentina has won. Well, it was a great World Cup, wasn't it? Um, yeah, and the next World Cup, the World Cup 2026 already, is on the brink, and there are some discussions going on about the format. Originally, FIFA decided to increase up to 48 teams, and then came along with a format that was highly criticized with 16 groups of 3 teams, but this leads to a lot of trouble and inconsistencies and unpleasant outcomes. I don't go deeper into that because I think people already have acknowledged that and already moved away from that format of 16 groups of 3 teams and said they would like to go with 12 groups of 4 teams. So, what we did is we sat down and got into details and tried to figure out, okay, what can be done, how can this be achieved, and also had a look on the venues that have been announced in December for the World Cup and how the format can be mapped onto this venues and onto a calendar schedule. So let's have a look. So how it starts. We start with a triple group clustering. Well, we have 48 teams and they will be split into 12 groups of 4 teams. That's the basis of this format and that it is discussed. But now we have defined our own approach on how to solve all the obstacles around it. So these are the 12 groups, the 12 groups with 4 teams, and we label the groups from A to L. Then the groups will be further clustered into smaller items, and these are 3 groups each, so we have 4 triple groups. So let's have a look. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and finally J, K, L. These are forming 4 clusters of 3 groups each. And that's just in a proposal. I think that's a nice gesture that one can do. Is we had great players in the past, and why not giving their names as kind of reminiscence for these great players for these triple groups. So, for example, let's name the first one Yekini, the second one Puskás, the third one Pelé, and the fourth Maradona. This is just an example, maybe because that is a bit more user-friendly, and you will see in the next examples that sometimes it makes sense to use these names instead of A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. So let's continue. Well, there you see our 4 clusters, 3 groups. And and then we have the wildcard round. So how will the knockout stage look like coming from this 4 clusters? We have the wildcard round. You can also say this is kind of a round of 24 teams because 24 teams will qualify more or less after the group stage for the knockout stage. So 24 teams, 12 group winners, those are the W's here, and the 12 runners up, which are here the R's, and then we have the 3rd and the 4th place teams, and there's the cut. And unfortunately for those teams, all on 3rd and 4th place need to go home. So there will be no 3rd place teams qualifying for the knockout stage in our scenario. So now becomes a bit tricky. The 2 best group winners of each cluster, they gain a bye for the first knockout stage, which is the wildcard round. And this means 8 teams go directly into the round of 16. So there they are. These 8 teams directly advancing. As you can see here, we showed the outcome of from which group of a cluster these teams can come is more or less the outcome of the results within the cluster. Yeah, it can be from A and B, it can also be from B and C, or however it looks like. We come to details later on how to determine which are these white winners which are going directly into the round of 16. Well, and then the remaining, let's say, worst group winner within a cluster and all the 3 runners-up. They are paired together in the wild card round, and they play matches against each other. They make kind of a playoffs in the wild card round. So these are the 4 remaining worst group winners, and there we have the 3 runners-up per cluster, so altogether 12 runners-up from each group, a runner-up, and these together are then of course 16 teams plus the 8 teams which have already had a bye to the round of 16s. Together are 24 teams. So that's it. That's pretty much the format. Sounds maybe easy, but now let's go even further into the details, how it might look like. We make an example of a triple group cluster. So, for example, we have here the ABC cluster, and we have it with 3 groups, and let's assume these are the outcomes of this 3 groups. So, as you can see, Sweden, France, and Italy won their group, and Canada, Nigeria, and Netherlands are the runners-up. So, how do we now determine the best group winners? Well, it's pretty easy. We simply take the 3 winners and make the Yekini cluster ranking. So there's the point where the name maybe sounds better than the ABC cluster ranking or so, the Yekini cluster ranking. And as you can see, Italy finished with 9 points, so they are top in this ranking. Then Sweden comes with 7 points out of the group, and France was the worst winner of it and made the first place with only 5 points out of 3 matches. So the top 2 group winners advance consequently directly into the round of 16, as we already explained, and they get a bye for the wildcard stage. So Italy and Sweden will advance directly to the round of 16. And now it becomes interesting how we now do define what are these wildcard matches. How do we allocate the teams to that wildcard matches? Well, there are 2 basic rules to define this. First, the 2 runners-up, which are not from the same group as the best group winner, they are playing one of the wildcard matches. As you can see, Italy was our top-ranked Yekini cluster ranking group winner. And so let's have a look on the groups A, B, and C. And then you can see, yeah, the runners-up of A and B played together, and this is Canada and Nigeria. So that's the first rule. And now we are coming to the second rule, and well, of course, there's only 1 pair remaining, but we can also describe a rule for it. And this is the worst group winner. This is France. And the runner-up from the group of the best group winner. The best group winner was Italy, the runner-up was Netherlands, so France will play Netherlands in the second wildcard match of this cluster. So there we go. ABC match 1, wildcard match 1 is Canada versus Nigeria, and the match labeled 2 is France versus the Netherlands. You may wonder why here is now path 1 and path 4. We will come to that if we have a closer look on the tournament brackets. So this is a typical display on the knockout stage of a tournament, and you might know it from the World Cups with 32 teams. We will now have a closer look on how it will be enhanced more or less if we have not 16 teams in a round of 16, but as I mentioned also a round of 24, so 8 additional teams, and this wildcard stage, this new stage within our tournament. So there we go. And as you can see, you can here find the cluster, the ABC cluster teams in this tournament brackets. Yeah. You have on both sides here, you have the 2 wildcard round matches, and you have then the round of 16. And as you can see, the winner of the wildcard round matches are going into the round of 16, and then they immediately face the opponent from the same cluster. And this goes with ABC, and as you can see, vice versa with DEF, and on the lower part of this tournament bracket you see it with GHI and JKL. So in this positioning of the teams has a pretty advantage, and it means that 2 teams from the same group cannot encounter again before the final. That's pretty awesome, I think. So yeah, of course, as you can see here, um, these three teams with on one side ABC W1, ABC R.2, R.3, they are coming from different groups within the cluster, and the same on the right side. So, for example, if they come from the same group, they cannot face each other before the final or the third place match. Hopefully for them, they reach the final. So, going again here a bit more into the details, W.1 has a bye at the wildcard stage, as already mentioned several times, and 3 and 2, R2 and R3 are coming from different single groups. Whereas, so this is Italy, and then we have Canada and Nigeria here. And on the right side, we had, maybe you have remembered it, Sweden as the second best group winner, and France as the worst group winner will face Netherlands, because Netherlands were in the same group as the best group winner, Italy. So as you can see, Italy and Netherlands can only face in the final, same with Sweden and Canada, and France and Nigeria. So I moved myself a bit. So now the summary of it, and that is something because of this shortcuts maybe you should consider. So again, W1, W2 and W3 are the group winners, and they are ranked in the order of the outcome of their the Yekini ranking, the Yekini cluster ranking. R.1, R.2 and R.3 are the runners-ups, and here the number 1, 2 and 3 does not represent a ranking. These numbers represent the relation to the Yekini ranking. So R1 is the runner-up of Italy group, R.2 is the runner-up of Sweden's group, and R.3 is the runner-up of France, because France was third place in the Yekini ranking, and R.3 is then the runner-up of France's group. So it's important to understand this is the not ranking of the runners-up, not ranking the runners-up. So in WR then, in the round of 16, that you have a better understanding, our WR here stands for that wildcard match where the winner and the runner-up matched or face each other. So we have it here with ABC WR on the right side, where France or either France or Netherlands will enter, and on the left side we have ABC RR, and these are two runners-up, the wildcard stage match with the two runners-up of the cluster ABC, and this is Canada either or Nigeria. So, and you remember that we talked about paths, if you have listened closely. And yeah, the path is pretty awesome, because we had the path 1 and the path 4 for the ABC cluster, for the Yekini cluster. And where do we found here in the tournament brackets the path? Well, we found it here. We have wildcard match path 1, round 16 match path 1, and then of course it does not fit anymore, because then the path gets together with another path. But also here on the other side you have wildcard match path 4, and the winner going into the round of 16 match path 4. And there we have 8 paths, and later in the schedule we'll see where this all ends. Now, everything until now was more or less theory. I think it's a pretty smart format, to be honest. For example, you have half of the field eliminated after group stage. This is quite common as we know it from the 32-team World Cup. You have the group winners awarded for good play with maybe scoring a lot of goals and winning a lot of matches already at group stage, so no dead rubber matches or so, or no collusion risk, because it is a goal to become within a cluster one of the top 2 group winners. So everyone would, I think, play for it, avoiding to play a wildcard round match. And Yeah, and then it continues also the idea of not facing a group opponent again until the final. So maybe the two best teams are drawn into one group, and that is then transparent if they play the final again, because they were the best teams. They are not facing each other at the quarterfinal or so and eliminating each other at early stage. No, they can only meet again in the final. But again, all that is theory so far. Is it really realistic to make a schedule with that, to map it on a calendar? Then we also have the venues at the World Cup, and there's some complexity around it because the World Cup will be held all over the North American continent, also with including Mexico and USA. So is it feasible really, or is it kind of only theory? So we present you now the calendar as we have thought it shall look like, and there it is. We had some focus points that I also want to draw your attention to. So our predominant goal was to avoid having too long interrupts for a single team playing back-to-back matches, and also to avoid having too short pause. And so what we were able to achieve is that we could guarantee that no team has back-to-back matches without having 2 rest days. So 2 rest days is the minimum within our calendar. And on the other side of it, the maximum is at one occurrence 6 rest days. In general, it's, as you could see here throughout, it's around 5, 4, and 3 match days. Not match days, sorry, calendar days. So that's the achievement that we could reach. And if you look at that schedule, it looks kind of similar as also a 32 team World Cup, and this rest days, number of rest days, are also typical for the current or the old format. So nothing new. And also the second objective that we would like to reach is that we don't have a too long stretch of the tournament. So as you could see here in our scenario, the World Cup starts on Friday the 5th of June 2026, and it will finally end on Sunday the 5th of July. So this is 31 days, pretty much the same as a 32 team World Cup. Qatar was a bit different. The schedule was a bit crashed, but typically it was always around like 30 to 32 days. So that's one point. And also what is pretty nice, I think, yeah, by that approach is you can also here see these paths that we described. Yeah, path 1, here's the path 4, here's the path 2 and 3, 5, then we have 8, 6 and 7. And as you can see, they are always within kind of a cluster. And that's pretty nice and pretty comprehensive, and it's good to plan for a team how the path, the way to the final would look like once they reach beyond the group stage. So, if you have heard about it in December, I think FIFA announced the 16 venues of the World Cup 2026, and here they are. And well, there are 16 venues, and 16 venues. But why don't we make use of our 4 clusters and say, okay, one cluster consists maybe of 4 venues each. Yeah, so let's group the venues by our clusters that we have, and there you see also our ABC cluster, our Yekini cluster, and in this case we said this, okay, it consists of Dallas, Monterrey, Guadalajara, and Mexico. Pretty easy. And this guarantees us that if we say all the matches are also played within these venues, that there are no really huge travel distances, at least not throughout group stage, but I will show you also later that it will be even more. Or I will show it now. Look at that dotted line here. And this dotted line tells us the following, that there's kind of a western half of the tournament and an eastern half of the tournament. And that's really, really great, I think. It's really a smart solution here, is that let's assume one team that is drawn into, let's say, Group K. So this team that is drawn into Group K will never have to cross this imaginary border between the eastern side and the western side. They will play all their matches on the eastern half of the continent or this tournament map, and until they reach the semi-final. So up to the quarterfinal, they will stay in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Houston, and Miami, and I will show you later that they also maybe have to play matches in the GHI cluster, the Pili cluster, but I come to that in the next slide, because there need to be some exceptions. Here is now also the calendar again, but this time we have different rows. This time we show as rows the venues and not the clusters. And this is a typical display of also how FIFA display the tournament schedules. And as you can see here, and this is pretty interesting, I think, and we try to colorize it like that, everything green belongs, of course, still to the ABC cluster, to the Yekini cluster. And it shows you a bit how we make use or how we can achieve creating a schedule. So let's first of all, before we come to the Yekini cluster, have an overall look. What we also try to achieve is that one single venue does not always have kind of two matches on the same day, or maybe even avoid as much as possible to have back-to-back days where one venue will host matches. And as you could see, we pretty much could achieve it, as there is kind of a bit of a traffic jam at the end of group stage, because you can consider we have 24 matches on the end of the group stage, and if you would like to have them in parallel, in this case we also have the Tuesday where even two clusters close their on the last match day. So altogether these are 24 matches on the last 3 days of the group stage, and of course with 16 venues it was unavoidable to have back-to-back days where one venue will have matches. But nevertheless, apart from that, as you can see, there are always at least one day interrupt or several days. But maybe if you have counted correctly now, you will notice something. You will notice that if we have 4 venues representing one cluster, it is not possible to have, especially on the last match days, 6 matches in parallel, because ABC, 3 groups, and a group has on the last match days 2 matches, so 3 times 2 are 6 matches starting in parallel on the last match day of a specific cluster. And if you only have 4 venues for 6 matches, this wouldn't work. So from time to time we need to get support, and support will then be provided by venues from other clusters, simply as that. And maybe we start with even here Mexico. Mexico has a fixed position. Mexico in our schedule will always be A1, and we would propose that Mexico starts the tournament, kicks it off in Mexico City. That's the inaugural match of the World Cup, and they will be allocated to spot A1. So the dark green, the middle green, and the light green, these are the 3 groups from the Yekini cluster. And here it is that let's have a look on the dark green group. This is the group A. So group A will have matches on the first day, 2 matches, the Mexican match, the inaugural match that I mentioned already in Mexico City. Then we have a match in Dallas, and then 5 days later 2 other matches in the same group, Mexico against A3 in Monterrey. So as you can see, Mexico will have all their group matches in the 3 cities where Mexico are taking part as host at the World Cup. And the second match on the second match day of Group A is in San Francisco. That's the point where we said, okay, we need to borrow a a venue from another cluster, so San Francisco. But nevertheless, as you can see, it's still in reach. Yeah, it's a bit of a traveling, of course, but it's not so much that you need to travel across the whole continent. And yeah, let's also have a look on the last match day. Here for that Group A, it's then in Guadalajara. So every venue in Mexico has seen the home country here. And the second match of the last match day in this Group A is then in Los Angeles. And you can also pick now maybe your choice, or maybe you're interested in a specific venue and would like to see which groups are hosted there. And let's make another example. Let's go to the blue cluster venues, which are predominantly Miami, Atlanta, Houston, and Philadelphia. The Maradona cluster, and let's make the light blue group. This is Group L. So Group L here would then start on, it's one of the last groups here, JKL, yeah, would start on June the 9th. Then already as a support venue of Kansas City. Then the second match will be staged in Atlanta. The third match would be staged in Toronto, again a supportive venue. The fourth in Houston, and the fifth and the sixth then in Miami and Philadelphia. So that's pretty much it. And of course, that's only the group stage. But let's have a look on the further venues. And as you could remember, we talked about the west side and the east side of the tournament. So now let's have a look on these red cluster, the Puskás cluster, and teams coming from that. Yeah, you would see here also, well, a team from DEF would also play the wildcard matches in the venues of the Puskás cluster in Seattle and in Vancouver. And then if they also pretend there and reach the round of 16, sorry for you missing out on the headline, the round of 16, which is here on Monday the 22nd, they still stay in the venues of the Puskás cluster and play in either Los Angeles or San Francisco. And even beyond, also the quarterfinal will then be in Los Angeles. So as you can see, that's really reducing the traffic amount for the teams who go deep into the tournament drastically, because such a team that I mentioned now maybe would, in theory, only have to travel a bit further or a bit farther than the semifinal, because then they would here, because that is match number 90, then they would play in match number 94, and that would be held in Atlanta. So that would be a bit more of a travel. And then if they reach the final, well, then the final shall take place in New York from our assumption. So of course, then that's also not so much distant then again. So pretty nice, I think, and really taking up the challenge to make a schedule that is mappable on our map with all the venues and the whole huge distances on the North American continent. And we reduced by this proposal the traveling a lot, I think. And I wonder if any other proposal might be able to do similar. It was heard that FIFA was thinking about having 2 24-team World Cups being held in parallel. I think when they talked about that, they had this in mind. They had in mind that it's difficult to travel across the whole country, from the east coast to the west coast to the quarterfinal, then back to the other coast for the semifinal, and maybe even then back or to the south for the final. And they wanted to avoid this, and I think that's the reason why they came up with this, some first idea of having 2 24 World Cups, and the winner of both of these World Cups then finally playing a final against each other. The thing is that I personally don't like that so much, because that means that, well, we have 48 teams, and this would mean that if you're drawn in either half of it, you cannot play against the half of the other teams until the final. So this is something kind of, yeah, not nice, because it makes really two halves of the World Cup. And our approach here is more kind of interwoven, and mixed with each other. And again, that there's the chance that you play your opponent from group stage in the final with our proposal, with that 2 times a 24 team World Cup approach. It's not possible. Then you can only face your group opponent in the semifinal. So yeah, our proposal or our suggestion would be to go with that format, the triple group wildcard 48. And that's it. Before I finish, maybe also would have a look. We talked about Mexico playing in Mexico City and in Monterrey and in Guadalajara. There are 3 group matches. We have chosen a bit of a different approach for Canada. Canada would play all their 3 group matches in Vancouver, so this is a bit of also of an exception. And the USA, in our scenario, would start the World Cup with the first match also on the first match day in New York. The second match would then be played in Houston, and the third match of the United States would be played in Miami, as an example. But of course, there are some variations that could be done here. Also, we did only a guessing coming to the knockout stage and where the matches might be held. But I think this is a good first draft, and of course, it can be more refurbished, or maybe there are some also rules that some matches shall have a minimum of possible attendances, and then our proposal won't work in detail. But never mind, I think the concept in general has been understood by you. I hope so. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's come to the conclusion. I hope you liked it. Remember the word triple group wildcard 48 is the name for it. You can also find it on Twitter, where we describe it, and will be also updated, because there's some updates that we made, or that I showed you here. And yeah, I hope you became a fan of it, and spread the word. Yeah, make some kind of push it, and like it, and also comment it. Yeah, give me your comments. What do you think? Do you have some improvements that you would like to suggest to us? Yeah, feel free to comment here in the section, and I would be glad to hear from you. And if you liked the presentation, and maybe we will succeed and we will have a great World Cup in 2026. Bye bye.